At 0647 on June 6, 1944, Commander Elias Vance stood in the cramped conning tower of USS Reaper, watching 3 Japanese destroyers cut through the moonlit waters off Tawi-Tawi. His hands gripped the periscope handles with the steady pressure of a man who had made this calculation 100 times before. 37 years old, 5 war patrols behind him, 19 enemy ships resting on the ocean floor because of decisions made in spaces exactly like this one. The lead destroyer was closing at 35 knots. Reaper, submerged, could manage 9 at best. The mathematics was simple. The destroyer would reach firing position in 4 minutes, maybe less. Lieutenant Commander Garrett Knox stood 3 feet away, studying the depth gauge with the kind of intensity that came from knowing your life depended on numbers. 45 years old, 20 years in submarines, Knox had seen commanders make the wrong choice in moments like these. He'd buried some of them. Range to lead target? Vance's voice carried no tension, just the flat, professional tone of a man asking about the weather. 1,100 yards, sir, closing fast. The sonar operator's voice crackled through the intercom. Young kid, maybe 22. His hands would be shaking right now. They always did when destroyers got this close. Vance pressed his eye to the periscope, adjusting focus. The destroyer materialized in the lens, Yukikaze. He'd studied her profile in the recognition manuals. 1,250 tons, 4 5-inch guns, designed specifically to kill submarines. She was beautiful in the way that weapons are beautiful. Clean lines, purpose made manifest in steel. Sir? Knox's voice held a question he didn't want to ask. Standard evasion protocol would be... I know the protocol, Garrett. Vance kept his eye on the periscope. The destroyer was close enough now that he could see the wake cutting white against the dark water, close enough to see the gun crews moving on deck. 2 months ago, he had done something no submarine commander in the history of naval warfare had ever done. He had charged a destroyer head-on and survived. More than survived. He had sunk her. The memory came unbidden. April 13th, 1944. Pearl Harbor, 1 day earlier. Admiral Charles Lockwood's office smelled like coffee and salt air. The map on the wall showed the entire Pacific Theater, red pins marking Japanese positions, blue pins marking American. Too much red, not enough blue. Vance stood at attention in front of Lockwood's desk. The Admiral was reading a report, his face giving nothing away. Commander Vance. Lockwood set down the paper. Your proposal is interesting, also insane. Sir, the mathematics... I've read your mathematics. Lockwood tapped the report. Down the throat attack. Fire torpedoes directly at an oncoming destroyer, then dive beneath her keel. You're aware this has never been successfully executed? Yes, sir. You're aware that between December 1941 and last month, Japanese destroyers have sunk 14 American submarines? Yes, sir. You're aware that in that same period, American submarines have sunk exactly 0 Japanese destroyers in direct combat? Vance met Lockwood's gaze. That's why the tactic will work, sir. They don't expect it. Lockwood leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. Outside the window, Pearl Harbor stretched toward the horizon, still rebuilding from the wounds of December 7th. Every submarine doctrine we have says run from destroyers, dive deep, go silent, wait them out. Every doctrine we have is based on the assumption that submarines are prey, Vance said. What if we're not? Lockwood studied him for a long moment. You have 4 war patrols under your belt. Good record. 18 ships confirmed destroyed. But this? He gestured at the report. This is something else entirely. Give me 1 chance to prove it works, sir. 1 encounter. And if you're wrong, then you'll need a new commander for Reaper. Lockwood pulled out a cigarette, lit it, took a long drag. The smoke curled toward the ceiling fan. The destroyer Ikazuchi is operating in your patrol sector. Intelligence says she's hunting submarines. Specifically, she's hunting you. Then I won't have to look far, sir. April 13th, the next day, 200 miles west of Pearl Harbor. Sonar picked up the destroyer at 0900 hours. Single contact, bearing 095, range 8,000 yards, moving fast. Knox had been Reaper's executive officer for exactly 6 days. He'd heard rumors about Vance. The whole fleet had heard rumors. Too aggressive, too willing to take risks, the kind of commander who either became a legend or got his entire crew killed. Sir, contact is closing, definitely a destroyer. Matches profile for Ikazuchi. Vance studied the plot. The destroyer was zigzagging, standard anti-submarine pattern. She was hunting. The question was whether she knew exactly where Reaper was or just suspected. Take us to periscope depth. The boat tilted upward. Water rushed past the hull. Vance walked to the periscope and pulled down the handles. The destroyer materialized, 1,700 tons of steel and fury, cutting through the water at 35 knots. Her bow wave was tall enough to see from 3 miles away. Every instinct developed over 4 war patrols said dive, go deep, silent running, wait for her to pass overhead and pray the depth charges missed. Vance had spent 2 months calculating a different solution. All ahead flank, come right to course 095. The helmsman's hands froze on the controls. Knox turned, his face carefully neutral. Sir, that's directly toward... I know what course that is, Garrett. Execute the order. The helmsman looked at Knox. Knox nodded once. The wheel turned. Reaper's bow swung toward the destroyer. The diesel engines thrummed louder, pushing the submarine to maximum submerged speed. 9 knots, maybe 10 if they pushed hard. The destroyer was still doing 35. Knox moved closer to Vance, voice low. Sir, we're heading straight at her. Yes.
That's not standard, There's nothing standard about what we're about to do. Through the periscope, Vance watched the range close. 3,000 yards. The destroyer hadn't changed course. Her sonar hadn't picked them up yet. Or maybe it had, and her captain was trying to decide if the contact was real. 2,500 yards. 2,000. Sir? The sonar operator's voice cracked slightly. Destroyer has increased speed. She's seen us. 1,500 yards.
Vance could see individual sailors on the destroyer's deck now, could see the forward gun turret traversing, trying to find a target that was still underwater. 1,200 yards. Knox cleared his throat. Sir, at current closure rate, we'll be at collision range in 96 seconds, I know. Sir, down the throat attack, Garrett. We fire torpedoes straight at her bow, then dive beneath her keel. If the torpedoes hit, we survive. If they miss...
Vance kept his eye on the periscope. Well, you'll get command of Reaper, briefly. 1,000 yards. The destroyer's bow filled the periscope view. Vance could see the bone in her teeth, the white water churning as she charged. 900 yards. His finger found the firing trigger. Bearing set, range set, fire 1, fire 2, fire 3, fire 4. The submarine shuddered as 4 torpedoes launched from the forward tubes. Compressed air hissed.
The weapons raced toward the destroyer at 46 knots. Take her down! 300 feet. Emergency dive. Reaper's bow tilted down at a 30-degree angle. Men grabbed handholds. Loose equipment clattered to the deck. Vance counted in his head. Torpedo run time to target 18 seconds at current range. Dive time to 300 feet 40 seconds. They had 22 seconds of margin for error. 22 seconds between vindication and death. The first explosion came at 15 seconds. The shockwave hit Reaper like a physical blow. Light fixtures shattered. The submarine rolled 10 degrees to starboard. Second explosion at 17 seconds. Closer. Louder. The hull groaned under the pressure. Third explosion at 19 seconds. This one lifted Reaper's stern 6 feet, then slammed it back down. Every man in the conning tower was thrown against the bulkheads. Vance held onto the periscope mount, his knuckles white. Then silence. Just the sound of water rushing past the hull as Reaper descended into darkness. Knox pulled himself upright, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow. "Sir?" Vance climbed to the periscope, swung it to point astern. The destroyer had broken in half. Both sections were sinking, trailing oil and debris. The bow section was already underwater. The stern was following, propellers still turning uselessly as it went down. 3 hits, Vance said quietly.
At 900 yards, Knox stared at him. We just sank a destroyer in direct combat. Vance stepped away from the periscope. Send a message to Admiral Lockwood. Tell him, expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. The radio man's hands shook as he typed out the message. Knox found his voice. Sir, that was effective. I was going to say insane. Vance allowed himself a small smile. Those aren't mutually exclusive, Garrett.
The fleet's reaction to the message was immediate and skeptical. Must be a mistake. Impossible. Submarines don't sink destroyers in combat, but the intelligence reports confirmed it. Destroyer Ikazuchi, sunk. Location matched Reaper's position. No other vessels in the area. One submarine had done what the entire Pacific Fleet said couldn't be done. Admiral Lockwood read the after-action report 3 times. Then he picked up the phone and called Vance back to Pearl Harbor. May 20th, 1944. Lockwood's office again. The map on the wall had changed, more blue pins, fewer red ones. The war was turning slowly, at tremendous cost. Commander Vance, Lockwood didn't look up from the map. The fleet thinks you're either brilliant or suicidal. Command hasn't decided which. And you, sir? I think you proved a tactic works once. Once doesn't make it doctrine. Vance said nothing. Lockwood turned from the map. Japanese mobile fleet is concentrated at Tawi-Tawi. 4 battleships, including Yamato, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 28 destroyers. He paused. It's the largest concentration of Japanese naval power since Midway. Code breakers? Know exactly where they are. The question is what they're planning. Lockwood pulled out another cigarette, didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. I'm sending Reaper to patrol Tawi-Tawi. Your orders are to observe and report fleet movements, attack targets of opportunity. He met Vance's eyes. Those targets include destroyers. Yes, sir. Elias. Lockwood's use of his first name was deliberate. April was 1 kill. Impressive, yes. But 1 kill can be luck. Command needs to know if this tactic is reproducible. How many kills would constitute proof, sir? Lockwood smiled grimly. Surprise me? Vance stood. Sir, I'm going to sink 4 destroyers in 4 days. That's... Lockwood stopped. You're serious? Yes, sir.
Vance, that's not a tactical objective. That's a death wish. Permission to prove otherwise, sir? Lockwood stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Granted, but Elias, don't make me write letters to 79 families. I hate writing those letters. You won't need to, sir. We'll be back. June 1st through 5th. Waters off Tawi-Tawi. 9 days of patient observation. Vance kept Reaper submerged during daylight, surfacing only at night to recharge batteries.
The Japanese fleet sat at anchor, massive and seemingly invulnerable, but the destroyers patrolled, always moving, always searching. Vance logged their patterns, course changes, timing, formation preferences. Knox found him in the wardroom at 0200 on June 5th, charts spread across the table, pencil in hand. "Sir, you've slept maybe 2 hours in the last 48. "Can't sleep, Garrett. Too many calculations." Knox looked at the charts. They were covered in pencil marks. Firing solutions, range calculations, angles of attack. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Always." "The crew is starting to worry. They hear you pacing at night. They see you calculating firing solutions for scenarios that may never happen." "They will happen, Garrett. I'm going to make them happen." Knox pulled up a chair, sat down. "Sir, Ikazuchi was 1 kill. It was brilliant. But what you're proposing, 4 destroyers in 4 days, that's statistically impossible? I was going to say unlikely." Vance set down the pencil. His eyes were bloodshot, his face unshaven. "Let me tell you what's impossible, Garrett. Impossible is winning this war by running every time a destroyer shows up. Impossible is asking submarine crews to be prey for 4 more years." He tapped the chart. This is just mathematics. Speed, range, timing, human psychology."
Psychology? Japanese destroyer captains expect us to run. That expectation creates a decision window. They see a submarine, they calculate pursuit vectors, they assume we'll dive and evade. Vance smiled. "What if we don't?" "Then they adjust their tactics. Not fast enough, not at 900 yards, not at combat speed." Vance's finger traced a line on the chart. "The human brain needs time to process unexpected information, time to override training and instinct."
At 35 knots, they don't have that time. Knox studied the charts. The mathematics were sound, the logic was impeccable, but there was a difference between theory and reality. "Sir, even if you're right, and I'm not saying you're not, 4 kills in 4 days requires perfect execution. No mistakes, no mechanical failures, no bad luck." "I know. And if something goes wrong, then I'm wrong, and we die." Vance met Knox's eyes. "But Garrett, I'd rather die proving a new way to fight than survive by running for the rest of this war." Knox nodded slowly. "The crew will follow you, sir. They followed you against Ikazuchi. They'll follow you here." "I know they will. That's what keeps me up at night." June 6th, 0300 hours. The Japanese patrol plane spotted Reaper's periscope wake at 15 miles north of Tawi-Tawi. The pilot radioed immediately. Admiral Ozawa, commander of the mobile fleet, received the report at 0315. He summoned his destroyer division commander, an American submarine operating this close to the fleet. "Sir, we have patrol protocols. Well, I want it dead, not driven off, not scared away. Dead." Ozawa's finger stabbed the map. "Send 3 destroyers, Yukikaze, Akatsuki, Shiranui. Best captains we have." 3 destroyers for 1 submarine, sir?" Ozawa's expression was cold. "You heard what happened to Ikazuchi in April. The Americans are changing tactics. We change with them." The orders went out at 0330. 3 destroyers, immediate dispatch. Find the American submarine, destroy it. 0647 hours, which brought Vance to this moment. 3 destroyers closing. Yukikaze in the lead, the other 2 spread wide, boxing Reaper into a kill zone. Knox stood beside him, waiting. The entire crew was at battle stations, waiting. 79 men whose lives depended on what Vance decided in the next 30 seconds. Through the periscope, he watched Yukikaze's bow wave, measured the range, calculated the firing solution one more time. "Garrett." "Sir?" "Remember April 13th, when I said this tactic would work?" "Yes, sir. I'm about to prove it works 3 more times in the next 4 days." Knox's jaw tightened. "4 more, sir. You said 4 destroyers in 4 days." Vance smiled. "Right, 4 more. He gripped the periscope handles. "All ahead flank. Come to course 045. We're charging the lead destroyer." The helmsman's voice was steady. All ahead flank, aye, coming to 045. Knox took a breath. Sir, just to confirm, we're charging toward 3 destroyers. Not toward 3, Garrett, toward 1. The other 2 will wait to see what happens to Yukikaze. And if they don't wait, Vance kept his eye on the periscope. The range was closing. 1,000 yards.
900, 800. Then I'll have been wrong, and you'll have about 90 seconds to think of something clever before we all die. 750 yards. Vance's finger found the firing trigger. Down the throat attack. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. The torpedoes launched, 3 white trails racing toward the destroyer. Take her down! 300 feet! All ahead flank! Reaper's bow dropped like a stone.
And Commander Elias Vance, 37 years old, 5 war patrols, 19 ships destroyed, began the 4 days that would change the Pacific War. The torpedoes ran true. The first torpedo struck Yukikaze's hull 43 seconds after launch. The explosion was muffled by 300 feet of seawater, but every man in Reaper felt it through the deck plates, a dull thump that rattled teeth and made the lights flicker. Second impact at 45 seconds. The third hit 2 seconds later, closer to the waterline. This explosion was different, louder. The kind of detonation that happens when high explosives find a magazine. Reaper was still diving, 320 feet, 340. The hull groaned under the pressure. Vance held onto the periscope mount, counting silently. The destroyer's depth charges would be set for 200 feet, maybe 250. By the time they detonated, Reaper would be safely below them, if his calculations were correct. If the destroyer had time to launch depth charges before sinking. If. Always if. The depth charges never came. At 360 feet, Vance ordered the dive arrested. Level off, reduce speed to 4 knots, silent running. The submarine leveled out. The crew moved through the boat like ghosts, every sound carefully controlled. A dropped wrench could mean death. A slammed hatch could mean death. Even breathing too loud could mean death when enemy destroyers were hunting overhead. Knox stood motionless beside the plotting table, listening. 60 seconds of silence. 90. 2 minutes. At 3 minutes, the sonar operator's voice came through the intercom, barely a whisper. Con, sonar. No contacts, no propeller sounds, nothing. Vance walked to the periscope. Up scope. The periscope slid upward. He pressed his eye to the lens and rotated slowly, scanning the surface. Where Yukikaze had been, he saw an oil slick spreading across the water. Debris, life rafts. The destroyer was gone, broken in half, 1,250 tons of steel resting on the ocean floor. The other 2 destroyers were running, full speed, heading south, dropping depth charges at random intervals. Panicked captains hoping to hit a target they could no longer see. Knox moved beside him. Sir? Yukikaze is down. The other 2 are retreating. Retreating? Knox repeated the word like it was foreign. Destroyers don't retreat from submarines. They do now? Vance stepped back from the periscope. Mark the time, 07:15, June 6th, 1944. 2 destroyers just learned to fear submarines. He walked to the radio room. Send a message to Admiral Lockwood. Encountered 3 Japanese destroyers, engaged lead vessel, 1 destroyer sunk, 2 destroyers withdrew, Reaper proceeding on patrol. The radio man typed out the message, hands steady now. The fear had burned off, replaced by something else. Confidence, pride. The knowledge that they had just done the impossible twice. Knox followed Vance to the wardroom. Sir, the Japanese will respond to this. I'm counting on it. They'll send more destroyers, Good. Vance pulled out a chart, spread it on the table. More destroyers means more targets. Knox studied the chart. Vance had marked patrol patterns, timing, likely response vectors. Sir, you're planning the next engagement already. I'm planning the next 3 engagements, Garrett. 1 for each of the next 3 days. Sir, Vance looked up. You want to say something? Say it. Knox chose his words carefully. 2 months ago, we sank 1 destroyer and proved a tactic works. Today we sank another and proved it wasn't luck. The fleet will accept that. Command will accept that. You don't need to push further. Yes, I do. Why? Vance's finger traced the chart. Because 1 kill is an accident, 2 kills is a tactic, but 4 kills in 4 days? He looked at Knox. 4 kills in 4 days is a revolution. The message reached Admiral Ozawa at 0900 hours. Yukikaze sunk. Akatsuki and Shiranui withdrew without engaging. He read the report twice, then summoned his staff. 1 American submarine, has now destroyed 2 of our destroyers. Mitti, his destroyer division commander, stood at attention. Sir, we underestimated their aggression. Obviously, Ozawa's voice was ice. How do we respond? Standard protocol would be to increase patrol density. More destroyers, tighter search patterns. No, Ozawa cut him off. No more standard protocols. The Americans are changing tactics. We change with them. He turned to the map. Pull 8 destroyers from convoy escort duty. Form hunter-killer groups. Their only mission is to find and destroy that submarine. 8 destroyers for 1 submarine, sir. That submarine is disrupting this entire fleet. It's making our destroyer captains hesitate. Hesitation kills. Ozawa's finger stabbed the map. Find it. Kill it. I don't care how many destroyers it takes. The orders went out within the hour. 8 destroyers, organized into hunter-killer groups. Maximum aggression, no retreat. Kill the American submarine operating near Tawi-Tawi. Every destroyer captain received the same briefing. The enemy has changed tactics. They charge instead of run. Be prepared. June 7th, 0230 hours, Vance ordered Reaper to the surface. The night was pitch black. No moon, heavy cloud cover. Perfect conditions for what he had planned. The diesels rumbled to life, recharging batteries. Fresh air poured through the hatches. Men who had been breathing recycled air for 18 hours gulped it down like water. Knox stood on the bridge beside Vance, scanning the horizon with binoculars. Sir, surfacing this close to enemy fleet is unexpected, which makes it safe. That's circular logic, sir. That's tactical psychology, Garrett. At 0312, the radar operator's voice crackled over the bridge speaker. Contact, single ship, bearing 095, range 8,000 yards, closing fast. Vance didn't move. Classification? Contact is doing 28 knots, definitely a destroyer.
Knox lowered his binoculars. Sir, we need to dive. No, we attack. On the surface, against a destroyer. That's unexpected. Vance's smile was invisible in the darkness, which means it'll work. All ahead flank. Come to intercept course. Reaper's diesels roared. The submarine picked up speed. 15 knots, 18, 21 knots maximum. The destroyer was doing 28, but she was moving away, not toward. Her radar hadn't picked up Reaper yet. Or if it had, the operator thought the contact was another destroyer returning to base. 4,000 yards. Knox gripped the bridge rail. Sir, if they detect us, they already have. Question is whether they recognize what they're seeing. 3,000 yards. The destroyer's silhouette was visible now against the stars. Akatsuki, one of the 2 that had retreated that morning. Captain Kubota commanded Akatsuki. Vance had studied his service record. Aggressive commander.
Excellent tactician, but exhausted. He'd been searching for submarines since 0100. His guard would be down 2,500 yards. Akatsuki's radar operator finally realized the contact wasn't a friendly. The destroyer began turning, her guns traversing. Too late. Bearing set, range set, fire 1, fire 2, fire 3, fire 4. 4 torpedoes launched in rapid sequence. Reaper shuddered with each release. Crash dive, take her down, 400 feet. The submarine's bow tilted down sharply. Water crashed over the bridge. Vance and Knox dropped through the hatch, sealing it behind them. Reaper dove at maximum angle. The deck was nearly vertical. Men clung to handholds and ladders. The first torpedo struck Akatsuki at 0322. The explosion lit up the night sky, visible even through the periscope. The second torpedo hit 3 seconds later, near the aft magazine. This explosion was catastrophic. The destroyer's stern section tore completely off. The ship rolled 90 degrees, her propellers still spinning uselessly as she went under, stern first. Captain Kubota and 147 sailors died in less than 90 seconds. Vance watched through the periscope as Akatsuki disappeared beneath the waves. He felt nothing, no triumph, no remorse, just the cold satisfaction of accurate calculations proven correct. Mark time of sinking 0323. Log it as hostile destroyer, night surface engagement. Knox was staring at him. Sir, you just sank a destroyer from the surface at night. No submarine has ever tried. Vance stepped back from the periscope. Take us deep. Silent running. Japanese patrol planes will be here in minutes. The news reached Admiral Ozawa at 0600. Akatsuki sunk. Night surface attack. The submarine had engaged from the surface, fired torpedoes, and escaped before aircraft could respond. Ozawa's hand crumpled the message. Surface attack. They attacked on the surface. His staff stood silent. There was nothing to say. The Americans had just rewritten every assumption about submarine warfare. 2 destroyers. Ozawa's voice was quiet, dangerous. 2 destroyers in 2 days. To 1 submarine. His fleet operations officer spoke carefully. Sir, the submarine is operating with impunity. Our destroyer screen is compromised. If we remain at we remain until Operation AGO begins. Sir, that's not scheduled until June 15th. 6 more days of exposure. Ozawa turned to the map. The American submarine was hunting his destroyers like they were prey. His destroyer captains were scared. He could hear it in their radio transmissions, see it in their hesitant tactics. Fear was contagious. Fear spread through fleets like disease. Send a message to Admiral Yamamoto in Tokyo. Japanese mobile fleet may need to depart Tawi ahead of schedule. Awaiting orders. June 8th, 1400 hours. Vance studied 2 Japanese destroyers through the periscope. They were steaming in formation, conducting a standard search pattern off Sibutu Passage. One was Shiranui, the last of the 3 destroyers that had hunted Reaper 2 days ago. Range to targets? Lead destroyer 3,000 yards, trail destroyer 3,500. Vance watched them for 90 minutes. Knox stood beside him, silent, learning. The destroyers were following a zigzag pattern, changing course every 8 minutes. Textbook anti-submarine tactics, the kind of maneuver taught at every naval academy in the world, which made them predictable. Vance timed the course changes with a stopwatch. 8 minutes, every time, exactly 8 minutes. Garrett, you see the problem? Knox studied the plot. They're following doctrine too precisely. Doctrine gets you killed when facing an enemy who's studied your doctrine. Vance's finger traced their path. They change course every 8 minutes. The turn takes 30 seconds. During that 30 seconds, they're vulnerable. You're going to attack during the turn. I'm going to position us directly in their path. and wait for them to turn into my firing solution. Knox did the math mentally. Sir, that gives you maybe a 45-second firing window. More than enough. Vance maneuvered Reaper into position 300 feet below the surface, directly on the destroyer's projected track. Then he waited. Patience was a weapon. The ability to sit motionless while enemy ships steamed overhead, to control breathing and fear and the urge to act, was often more valuable than torpedoes. At 16:30, Shiranui began her turn. Vance counted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Up, scope. The periscope slid upward. Shiranui filled the view, broadside, 1,200 yards away. The perfect shot. Bearing set, range set, fire 1. 17 seconds. Fire 2. 17 seconds. Fire 3. 17 seconds. Fire 4. Down scope, take her down 400 feet. The first torpedo missed, passing ahead of Shiranui's bow. Vance had anticipated that. The first shot was always a ranging shot. The second torpedo struck the bridge. The explosion was sharp, precise. Command and control destroyed in an instant. The third torpedo hit the forward magazine. This explosion was different, massive, the kind of detonation that happens when 10 tons of high explosive meets an ignition source. Through the hull, every man in Reaper heard it clearly. A low, rolling boom that seemed to go on forever. Shiranui's bow section separated from the main hull. Both pieces sank within 3 minutes. The escort destroyer immediately charged Reaper's last known position, dropping depth charges as she came. Rig for depth charge attack. All hands brace for impact. The first pattern exploded overhead. 6 charges in a tight cluster. The submarine rolled 15 degrees, light bulbs shattered. Cork insulation rained from the overhead. Second pattern, closer. The explosions lifted Reaper's stern, then slammed it back down. Third pattern, fourth, fifth. For 40 minutes the destroyer hunted. 40 minutes of controlled terror. Men standing at their stations, holding on to whatever was bolted down, waiting for the next explosion to be the one that cracked the hull and sent seawater pouring in at crushing pressure. Knox stood beside Vance, watching the depth gauge. 400 feet. The submarine was rated to 350. They were beyond design limits, trusting in welds and steel, and the engineers who had built Reaper in some shipyard back home. At minute 43, the depth charge attacks stopped. Silence. Vance counted to 100, then ordered periscope depth. The ocean was empty. The destroyer had withdrawn either out of depth charges or convinced the submarine was destroyed. Surface, recharge batteries. I want us ready for tomorrow. Knox found his voice. 3 destroyers, sir, 3 days. Ye. 1 more tomorrow, Garrett, then we're done. Done? 4 destroyers in 4 days. That's what I promised Admiral Lockwood. Vance walked to the chart table. Tomorrow we finish it. June 9th, 0500 hours. Vance brought Reaper to periscope depth 12 miles southwest of Tawi-Tawi. What he saw made Knox inhale sharply. 4 Japanese destroyers in line abreast formation, actively searching. Their sonar was pinging so loud the sound operator could hear it without headphones. Sir, that's 4 targets. Vance's voice was calm. We have 8 torpedoes remaining, 2 shots per target, if we're efficient. Sir, 4 destroyers means coordinated attack. If we engage one, the other 3 will converge. Yes. Knox waited. Vance studied the formation through the periscope. Garrett, I need you to understand something. I'm not trying to sink all 4 destroyers. Sir? I'm trying to sink 1, maybe 2 if we're lucky. But what I'm really trying to do is break their will. Vance stepped back from the periscope. 4 destroyers hunting 1 submarine. That's respect. That's fear. That's the Japanese Navy acknowledging we're not prey anymore. He smiled slightly. Now I'm going to prove they're right to be afraid. He studied the formation for another hour. The destroyers were in standard search pattern, but the second destroyer in line was maintaining steadier course than the others. Less aggressive maneuvering, tired captain, probably. Exhausted from days of hunting, tired captains made mistakes. At 0612, the second destroyer turned directly toward Reaper's position. Range, 4,000 yards. Vance let her close. 3,000, 2,500. At 1,800 yards, he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 struck the destroyer's port side within 5 seconds of each other. The ship exploded with such violence that debris flew 300 feet into the air. She rolled over and sank in 90 seconds. The other 3 destroyers converged immediately. Take her deep, 500 feet, silent running. Reaper dove into darkness. The depth gauge needle swung past 400 feet, 450, 500. The hull groaned. Metal creaked. Every rivet and weld was being tested beyond design limits. Depth charges began exploding overhead. 23 in the first 10 minutes. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in red. A pipe burst in the forward torpedo room, spraying seawater. Damage control crews worked in the dark, their hands knowing by touch what their eyes couldn't see. For 2 hours, the destroyers hunted. 2 hours of explosions and darkness and the steady drip of water from stressed hull plates. Knox stood beside Vance in the red-lit control room, both men silent. There was nothing to say, nothing to do. Just wait and trust that Reaper's hull would hold. At 0815, the explosion stopped. Vance counted to 500 before ordering the submarine to periscope depth. The ocean was empty. The destroyers had withdrawn. Mark the time, 0820, June 9th, 1944. Vance's voice was hoarse. Log it as hostile destroyer sunk. 4 enemy escorts engaged. Reaper proceeding on patrol. Knox looked at him. 4 destroyers in 4 days, sir. You did it. Vance stared at the chart table. We did it, Garrett. Now we find out if it mattered. He marked the position of each kill on the chart. Yukikaze on June 6th, Akatsuki on June 7th, Shiranui on June 8th, unknown destroyer on June 9th. 4 ships, 4 days, and somewhere above them in the waters of Tawi-Tawi, the Japanese mobile fleet was about to make a decision that would change the Pacific War. Reaper limped south from Tawi-Tawi at 8 knots, conserving fuel, 17 days back to Fremantle. 17 days of silence and salt air and the steady rhythm of diesel engines pushing through dark water. Vance spent most of those days in his quarters writing. The tactical manual had been forming in his mind since April. Now he committed it to paper. Every calculation, every firing solution, every lesson learned from 5 destroyer engagements, down-the-throat attack doctrine, speed differentials, psychological vulnerabilities of destroyer captains, the mathematics of aggression versus evasion. Knox found him on day 12, surrounded by papers, his handwriting cramped and precise. "Sir, you haven't slept in 30 hours." Vance didn't look up. "This needs to be finished before we reach port." "Why the urgency?" "Because if I'm wrong about any of this, someone else needs to know what I learned before they try it themselves." Knox sat down across from him. "You think you might be wrong?" Vance set down his pen. "I think I got lucky 4 times in 4 days, Garrett. I think the mathematics were sound, but there were a dozen points where one miscalculation would have killed us all. But we're alive. This time," Vance gestured at the papers, "next commander might not be as lucky. They need to know exactly what I did, and exactly where the risks are." On day 15, the radio operator intercepted Japanese naval communications, encrypted, but the traffic patterns told a story. The mobile fleet had departed Tawi-Tawi. Vance studied the intercept logs, trying to read meaning in signal strength and transmission frequency. "They left," he said quietly. "Sir?" "The Japanese fleet. They evacuated Tawi-Tawi." He looked at Knox. "Because of us?" Knox shrugged. "We sank 4 destroyers. Maybe that was enough to spook them. Or maybe they were always planning to leave and we just happened to be there. Does it matter?" Vance stared at the intercept logs. "I don't know, Garrett. I really don't know." June 26th, 1944. Fremantle, Australia. Admiral Lockwood was waiting on the pier when Reaper tied up. He was not alone. 2 Marine guards stood at attention. A photographer from Navy Public Relations. A handful of staff officers. Vance descended the gangway, 23 days of beard growth on his face, his uniform salt-stained and rumpled. Lockwood stepped forward. "Commander Vance." "Sir?" "Your patrol report makes interesting reading. 5 hostile destroyers engaged, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged, total patrol time 52 days, fuel consumption 84%, torpedoes expended 23. "Yes, sir." Lockwood reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. "The President of the United States, authorized by Act of Congress, has awarded the Navy Cross to Commander Elias Vance, United States Navy, for extraordinary heroism in combat operations against enemy forces." He pinned the medal to Vance's uniform. The photographer's camera clicked. Vance stood at attention, feeling nothing, just exhausted. The medal was heavy, or maybe he was just tired. "Sir, permission to ask a question." "Granted." "Did it matter?" "The 4 destroyers. Did sinking them matter strategically?" Lockwood smiled. Not the professional smile of an admiral addressing a subordinate. The genuine smile of a man about to deliver news he'd been waiting to share. "Walk with me, Elias." "Me." They left the pier, walking along the harbour. Knox followed at a respectful distance. The Marine Guards stayed behind. Lockwood pulled out a folder marked Top Secret. "You asked if it mattered. Let me show you." He opened the folder. Intelligence reports, intercepted Japanese communications, battle damage assessments. On June 10th, 1 day after you sank your 4th destroyer, Admiral Ozawa evacuated the mobile fleet from Tawi-Tawi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 24 destroyers, the entire fleet. "I saw the intercepts, sir." "Do you know why he left?" Vance shook his head. Lockwood pulled out a decoded Japanese message. "This is from Ozawa to Imperial Naval Command. Quote, if 1 American submarine can penetrate our defensive screen and destroy 4 destroyers in 4 days, the entire anchorage is compromised. Recommend immediate evacuation." He looked at Vance. "You didn't just sink 4 destroyers, Elias. You convinced the Japanese that Tawi-Tawi wasn't safe." "Sir, I'm not finished." Lockwood pulled out another document. "Operation A-Go. Japanese plan to destroy our invasion fleet at the Philippines. Required precise coordination. Fleet was supposed to depart Tawi-Tawi on June 15th. That would have given them 4 days of reconnaissance before engaging our carriers." Vance was beginning to understand. "But they left on June 10th, 6 days early, because of you." Lockwood's finger traced a timeline. "Ozawa arrived in the Philippine Sea on June 14th. His fleet was scattered across 200 miles of ocean. His reconnaissance aircraft had burned through fuel reserves during the early transit. His destroyer screens were still regrouping from anti-submarine patrols. His supply ships were 3 days behind schedule." Lockwood pulled out the final document. Battle report from the Philippine Sea. June 19th and 20th, Battle of the Philippine Sea. 15 American carriers against 9 Japanese carriers, 900 American aircraft against 430 Japanese aircraft. He handed the report to Vance. Vance read the numbers. His hands started shaking. Japanese losses: 376 aircraft destroyed, 3 carriers sunk, 2 battleships damaged, 75% of carrier air groups destroyed. American losses, 30 aircraft. "We're calling it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot," Lockwood said quietly. "Our pilots shot down Japanese aircraft like they were on a training exercise." Vance looked up. "Because Ozawa wasn't ready. Because you forced him to leave 6 days early. His fleet was disorganized. His reconnaissance was incomplete. His combat air patrols were undermanned." Lockwood took back the report. "Elias, your 4 destroyers in 4 days didn't just prove a tactic. You won the Battle of the Philippine Sea before the first shot was fired." The magnitude of it settled over Vance like physical weight. 4 destroyers, 4 days, and the entire strategic balance of the Pacific had shifted. "Sir, I was just trying to prove the tactic worked." "That's how history happens, Commander. Small actions, huge consequences." Lockwood put a hand on his shoulder. "You asked if it mattered. The answer is yes. It mattered more than you can possibly understand." July and August 1944. Fremantle. Vance spent 2 months training submarine commanders. 12 captains, eager and skeptical in equal measure, gathered in a briefing room while Vance walked them through the mathematics of aggression. Down-the-throat attack requires 3 things: accurate range calculation, perfect timing, and the willingness to charge directly at an enemy that can kill you in seconds. He drew diagrams on the chalkboard. Firing solutions, dive angles, psychological decision windows. Japanese destroyer captains expect you to run. That expectation creates hesitation. At 900 yards, traveling at 35 knots, they have approximately 12 seconds to process the fact that you're not running, 12 seconds to override training and instinct, 12 seconds to make a decision. One of the commanders raised his hand. "What if they make the right decision?" "Then you die." Vance's answer was matter-of-fact. "But statistically they won't. Not the first time. Not when every instinct says submarines don't charge destroyers." The tactic spread. Between June and August, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of Vance's aggressive approach. The success rate was 63%. For every 5 attacks, 3 destroyers sunk, 1 damaged, 1 submarine lost. Knox found Vance in the officers' club one night in early August, staring at a map of the Pacific. "You're thinking about the next patrol?" "Always." Vance didn't look away from the map. "Lockwood wants me to take command of a wolf pack. 3 submarines. Coordinated attacks." "You'll do it?" "Of course I'll do it." Vance smiled slightly. "I proved submarines can hunt destroyers. Now I'm going to prove they can hunt entire convoys." Knox sat down beside him. "Sir, permission to speak freely." "When have you ever needed permission, Garrett?" "You're different since we got back, since Lockwood told you about the Philippine Sea." Vance considered that. "I proved something I spent 2 years calculating. Changed the tactical balance of submarine warfare, influenced a major naval battle." He looked at Knox. "Yeah, I'm different, I'm right, about everything." Knox heard the edge in his voice, the confidence that had crossed into something else, something dangerous. "Sir, being right 4 times doesn't mean—" "I've been right 5 times, Garrett. Ikazuchi in April, 4 more in June, 5 for 5, perfect record." "Sir, we deploy in 2 days. Get the crew ready." August 5th, 1944, 6th War Patrol. Reaper departed Fremantle as part of a 3-submarine wolf pack. USS Predator and USS Shadow accompanied her. Vance commanded the group. Their mission: patrol waters west of Luzon. Attack Japanese shipping heading to the Philippines. For 19 days the patrol went perfectly. August 21st, a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay. Coordinated attack. 4 cargo ships sunk, 22,000 tons sent to the bottom. August 22nd, 3 coastal defense vessels off Bataan. All three sunk. August 23rd. Predator expended all torpedoes and withdrew. That left Reaper and Shadow operating together off Darcel Bay. Vance was in his element. Every attack succeeded. Every calculation proved correct. The Japanese were afraid now. He could hear it in their radio transmissions, see it in their hesitant tactics. He was invincible. Knox watched him and said nothing. There was nothing to say that Vance would hear. August 24th, 0530 hours. Vance studied a damaged Japanese destroyer through the periscope. She was listing slightly, moving at reduced speed. Easy target. Range to target? 4,000 yards, sir. Single contact. No escorts visible. Vance smiled. They're getting sloppy. Damaged destroyer. No escort screen. This is almost too easy. Knox stood beside him, something nagging at his mind. Something wrong. Sir, should we verify no escorts before... It's alone, Garrett. I can see the whole ocean. One damaged destroyer, probably trying to limp back to Manila. Sir, recommend we take time to... we don't have time. She'll reach shallow water in 30 minutes. I want her dead now. Knox opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Vance was the captain. Vance had sunk 5 destroyers. Vance knew what he was doing. Vance ordered Reaper to periscope depth, setting up the attack. He never saw the 2 Japanese escort ships 4 miles away, hidden in Reaper's sonar blind spot. CD-22 and minesweeper PB-102 had been hunting American submarines for 3 days. Japanese intelligence had intercepted radio transmissions during the Palawan Bay attack. They knew approximately where the Wolfpack was operating, and they had studied Vance's tactics, every patrol report, every engagement. They knew how he thought, how he attacked. His patterns, his confidence, they had set the perfect trap. The commander of CD-22 watched through binoculars as the American submarine's periscope broke the surface. Range, 6,000 yards. Closing slowly. All ahead, flank, close to attack range, maintain radio silence. At 0520, Shadow's sonar operator detected the 2 ships and tried to warn Reaper. No response. Reaper's radio was off, all attention focused on the damaged destroyer ahead. At 0530, Vance ordered the attack. Bearing set, range set, fire 1, fire 2. 2 torpedoes launched. At that exact moment, Knox heard it. The sound of high-speed screws, close, getting closer. Captain! Multiple contacts! Vance spun from the periscope. From what? 2 ships bearing 320, range 2,000 yards. Crash dive, emergency, all ahead flank. Too late. Reaper's bow tilted down, but her diesel engines were still running, still pushing exhaust through the snorkel. A massive bubble trail marked her exact position on the surface. CD-22's sonar operator had a perfect contact, range 1,200 yards, depth approximately 200 feet, still diving. Drop full pattern, depth setting 250 feet. And at 0547, the first depth charge pattern exploded around Reaper. 6 charges in a perfect bracket. 3 detonated within 50 feet of the hull. The pressure hull cracked near the after torpedo room. Seawater poured in at crushing pressure. Vance grabbed a handhold as the submarine rolled. All ballast! Emergency surface! The compressed air system fought against the flooding, but there was too much water in the stern compartments. Reaper couldn't reach the surface. The stern flooded completely within 90 seconds. The submarine's bow rose sharply as the stern dragged her down. At 0552, CD-22 made a second depth charge run. This pattern hit even closer. The explosions ruptured Reaper's main pressure hull in multiple locations. The control room flooded. All electrical power failed. Emergency lighting went dark. At 600 feet, well below maximum operating depth, Reaper's hull began to implode. In the darkness, Knox found Vance's arm.
Sir, I know. Vance's voice was steady, calm. I got cocky, Garrett. This is how legends die. You changed the war, sir. Did it matter if I didn't survive to see what comes next? The bulkheads were collapsing, water was pouring in from a dozen ruptures. Men were screaming in the darkness. Vance thought about the 4 days in June, the 4 destroyers, the perfect execution of impossible tactics. He thought about Admiral Lockwood's words, small actions, huge consequences. He thought about the 79 men who had followed him into battle because they believed he was invincible. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The final bulkhead collapsed at 0600 hours. USS Reaper imploded, her hull crushed like tin, and sank to the ocean floor 3,750 feet below. All 79 men died. Commander Elias Vance, Lieutenant Commander Garrett Knox, every sailor who had trusted that their captain's confidence was justified. The news reached Admiral Lockwood at 0800 on August 25th. Shadow's contact report was brief and final. Reaper engaged damaged destroyer. 2 Japanese escorts ambushed from blind spot. Depth charge attack, large quantities of oil and debris, no survivors. Lockwood read the message 3 times, then walked to the window of his office. Pearl Harbor stretched before him, ships coming and going, the machinery of war grinding forward. He thought about a young commander who had changed submarine warfare forever, who had proven that aggression could overcome doctrine, who had influenced a major naval battle without knowing it, who had died believing his own legend. Lockwood picked up a pen and began writing the letter to Vance's widow. He hated writing these letters. March 27th, 1946. The White House. President Truman presented the Medal of Honor to Elizabeth Vance, widow of Commander Elias Vance, United States Navy. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Commander Vance, commanding USS Reaper, destroyed 5 Japanese destroyers in aggressive short-range torpedo attacks. This remarkable achievement attests to Commander Vance's valiant fighting spirit and indomitable command. His actions directly influenced the strategic balance of naval warfare in the Pacific theater." Elizabeth accepted the medal with dry eyes. She had cried all her tears 2 years ago. The legacy spread in ways Vance never saw. By war's end, American submarines using his tactics had sunk 214 Japanese warships, 4 aircraft carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers, 38 destroyers. Japan started the war with 63 destroyers. They built 49 more. American submarines sank 38. Reaper accounted for 4 of them in 4 days. In 1954, the Navy commissioned USS Vance, a destroyer escort. She served until 1972. At the United States Naval Academy, submarine tactics instructors still teach the down-the-throat attack. Not because modern submarines use the same tactic, modern torpedoes are wire-guided and don't require close-range attacks, but because Vance's approach demonstrates a fundamental principle. When your enemy expects you to run, charging often works better than hiding. But never believe your own legend. On May the 22nd, 2024, 80 years after she sank, an underwater exploration team discovered Reaper's wreck in the South China Sea. She sits upright on the sea floor at 3,750 feet, 12 miles west of Daesol Bay. Her pressure hull remains mostly intact, except for depth charge damage near the conning tower. The wreck is a protected war grave. No salvage operations are permitted, but finding Reaper meant something more than locating a shipwreck. It meant bringing closure to families who had waited 80 years for answers, and it meant honoring 79 men who changed naval warfare forever. Commander Elias Vance's grave is at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 59, grave 874. His headstone lists his rank, his dates of service, and one line, Medal of Honor, Destroyer Killer. Every August 24th, families visit. They place flowers.
They share stories about grandfathers and great-uncles who died at 22 or 25 or 37, fighting a war most of them never expected to survive. The 79 men aboard Reaper came from 38 states. They volunteered for submarine duty knowing the casualty rates. 22% of submariners who served in World War II died, the highest percentage of any branch of the American military. They knew the odds, they served anyway. And for 4 days in June 1944, they proved that submarines could hunt the hunters. Small actions, huge consequences. That was Vance's real legacy. Not the Medal of Honor, not the ships named after him, not even the tactical doctrine that bears his name. His legacy was proving that one man, one submarine, one decision to charge instead of run could change the course of a war. He paid for that proof with his life. So did 78 men who followed him. But the Pacific War turned on those 4 days in June. The Battle of the Philippine Sea was won before it started. The Japanese Navy never recovered. And it all began with a simple question: what if we don't run? Commander Elias Vance answered that question with mathematics and aggression and the absolute certainty that he was right. He was right until the day he wasn't.